Now we're going to show you something called the CLD nose trick. And I'd like to quote from John Fisher, who wrote a wonderful book on the magic of Lewis Carroll. And he talks about this unusual device that was found among Carroll's effects after his death. It was affectionately known as the CLD nose trick. That's for Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, his real name. That's what his family liked to call it, because he would always bring this with him at gatherings and always get a very good reaction. He'd hold the handle, place his nose in the V-shaped groove, and pull the string back and forth. The string would appear to go through his nose, as we are going to demonstrate.
Ooh, ouch.
Oh,
Ouch.
ow. Excuse us for a minute. This is very painful. But for some reason, his family found
mine
it
goes when you pull. I think they're connected, Chris, because mine goes when you pull yours.
No,
Ouch.
you're right. Yeah. So it's kind of a strange thing.
Oh,
They're Siamese. Yeah. Yeah. So in fact, it had a very complicated internal design, and the good thing about this is, I have discovered that if you have one of these and you need a seat on a bus, this will guarantee that you'll get a seat on a bus or a train, no problems. So I can see why Lewis Carroll loved to do this. So we thought we would just do this stereo demonstration, even though we're separated by 3,000 miles. Yes, I'm in Boston and Stuart's in California, but the strings are fairly long. So that's a little fun from Lewis Carroll and his nose trick. Hi, I'm Chris Morgan. Today we're going to talk about Lewis Carroll and about his interest in magic, games, and puzzles. This was something that fascinated him all through his lifetime. So let's start with this little puzzle magic trick, if you will. It's called the Foxes and the Geese. And there are 7 of these little sponges. These are the 2 foxes, 1 in each hand. One day they're walking past a farm and they see 5 geese and they think, those look delicious. So they carefully, one at a time, picked up the 5 geese like this. And they were all set to run home with them when they heard the farmer coming around the corner, and they thought, oh no, we better put them back real fast. So they put them back again, one at a time, alternating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And they hide behind the bushes. So the farmer appears, he looks around, he says, oh, everything looks okay. So I guess we're fine. So he goes back into his house, and the foxes come out and they say, maybe we can do it this time quickly. So the alternating, they pick them up like so. But before they can get away with the geese, the farmer comes out one more time. So the only way that the fox can disappear safely are to run away together. So they decide to go this way. So there's just 2 of them going that way, but there are 5 geese safely on the other side. And that's the puzzle. How did we end up with 5 here and 2 here? Well, let's try it again. And I'll teach you how to do it. You can do this with any 7 items that are the same. You could use 7 coins, Lego pieces that all are shaped the same. That would be good. So you begin with your right hand when you pick them up in the first story, where you say there are 2 foxes and there are 5 geese. So the right hand picks up one of the balls, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand. Now, then you say that they have to quickly put them back because the farmer is going to catch them. So you put them back beginning with your left hand, and left and leave start with L. So leave with your left hand the second time around. So you have your 3, 4, 5 geese back again. Now actually, there are 2 sponge balls here and there are none here, but you make it look like you've got one there. So the last time around, after the farmer goes away, doesn't see anything, you once again pick them up with the right hand first. And then when you're done doing that, you're going to have just 2 foxes here and 5 geese. And that's how it works. And it's easy to learn, but it's kind of a good fooler. I put this over here, and then I'm going to ask you a question that very few people know the answer to. And the question is there a magic trick performed in the two Alice books, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland or Through the Looking Glass? Well, it turns out there is a magic trick, but Lewis Carroll very cleverly hides it in the story so that it's almost unnoticeable. And so the trick is in Through the Looking Glass, in the Wool and Water episode, where Alice visits the sheep's shop after going across in a rowboat. And you'll see that in front of the sheep on the table are some eggs, and which she sells. Now, Alice buys something. There's the egg, by the way. And the sheep says, the sheep took the money and put it away in a box. Then she said, I never put things into people's hands. That would never do. You must get it for yourself. And so saying, she went off to the other end of the shop and set the egg upright on a shelf. Now, how do you balance an egg upright on a shelf? Well, this is a hard-boiled egg. You could bang it on the floor and flatten it a little bit, but don't do it with a raw egg. But there's a much more interesting way to do it, and that's if I just take this and I just position it like so. So if I do it just carefully enough here, which is not very careful right now. There, I got it to balance. It's a little tricky. So the question is, how does that work? Well, the answer is a pinch of salt. So underneath here, you can see a little pile of salt there. And you just put the handkerchief over it. You kind of have to roll it around a little bit. Of course, if it gets too flattened out, it won't stay. But that's the balancing an egg trick, which I thought was really fun when I found out about it. I didn't know that Carroll hid that in there just for fun. Speaking of handkerchiefs, I'm going to show you a trick with a handkerchief mouse. I'm just going to make some room here on my table. And then it turns out that handkerchiefs were a favorite prop of Lewis Carroll's. And he used to like to make a handkerchief mouse, and this is what it looks like. It's a little tricky to make, but we'll have a link for you on the web with a video that shows how to make your own handkerchief mouse. It's not too hard to do. One great thing about his puzzles and games is that Carroll's child friends, many of them wrote reminiscences of spending time with Mr. Carroll. And so they give us some nice detail on how he used these little props for fun. So Isa Bowman was a child friend of Carroll's. And she said in her reminiscence that Carroll used to show me the most wonderful things made out of a handkerchief. Everyone, when a child, has, I suppose, seen the trick in which a handkerchief is rolled up to look like a mouse and then made to drop about by a movement of the hand. He did this better than anyone I ever saw, and the trick was a never-ending joy. So I first learned this trick from my parents. I don't know where they got it from, probably not from reading anything related to Carroll, but this has been around since the 19th century, and it's still popular today. So if you just pet it, it just comes to life and just seems to take on a life of its own. And if you're not careful, it'll actually go right out of your hand. It's whoa. So you may think there are strings or threads attached, but it's really not that at all. Here's the secret. You lay it on your hand like this so that your fingertips are there. And if they were to push slowly, you'd be pushing the mouse toward you. So while you're doing that, in that direction, you stroke it downward. So you get this illusion that it's going away from you. And if you really want to propel it, you can do this. get it up there. Then you move your hands around so it looks like it's alive. And so and you can see why Isaac Bowman liked it. But anyway, that's the one I like so much. And children love that. Now here's another thing you can do. You know, of course, the white rabbit is in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Here's how to make a white rabbit really fast with a handkerchief. You take your hand like this. I'm just going to tip my screen down a little bit. And you're going to essentially open your hand like this so that there's room here and there's room here, and you have your two middle fingers. So you cover over your hand, and then you're going to push into those two sides with your fingers. So if I can get this right. Then you take one corner and you put it up one side of your hand. And you take the other corner and you go up the other side to make two ears. So far it kind of looks like that. And that's going to be the nose. So you tuck these in like this, and then you pull these back a little bit like that. And once you've done sculpting it, you have a little rabbit, just a fake rabbit that you can make just in a few seconds. And that's the 1 minute rather, rabbit. Very simple, a lot of fun to do. And you get a good reaction when you show that to people. That's the 30-second mouse. Next, let's look at some origami, because Carroll loved origami. And all through his life came up with clever things to do with origami. So I'm going to show you a very old origami model. I've started to fold this. This is some origami paper, which is nice because it has one color on one side and white on the other, but you can use any square piece of paper you want. Again, we'll have a link for you that shows a video about how to make this Chinese boat, is what it's called. Now, I pre-folded it just so I could put it together a little more quickly to show you. There's a boat. There are several steps in this, and you could actually tell a little story. And I'm sure Carroll did that. So this is actually two boats. It's a catamaran. So they're side by side. And you can tell a story about going out in a catamaran, which is a type of boat. Inside the boat is a flap that you can open up, and you can get a sailboat, which is very nice. And there's one on the other side too. So I'll open up the two sails. So we have two sailboats with sails. And again, you could tell a story about someone going out in a catamaran or two sails. Then once the wind dies down, you can fold your sail away. So I'm going to fold it like that and just fold it down out of the way. And then the same thing on this side. I'm just going to fold these together and then fold this down like that. So now you have this flat gadget, and it's like a wallet. And you can tell a story about how your wallet fell off the boat. Or you can tell a story about how a box in your cargo fell overboard too, because the next part of this is a box. Very nice design. Now, this is a tricky fold here. It takes a little bit of practice to do. I pre-folded it to make it easier. So you flatten it down. So it kind of looks like a nice geometric shape, and it's got two little indentations in it. There's a variation on this where there's actually a sword going through it that's just made from paper. So it looks like a frame and sword. Now, the last part of this is very surprising because, I'll get this arranged just right. You can go from this to the boat just by opening it up like this. And these two sails open up like this, and you have this really cool Chinese designed boat with a little place storage spot in the middle. Now I'm going to read you again from one of Carroll's child friends, a Mrs. F. Renner. She wrote many years after she had spent time with him. She said, "We were all playing near the fort, and a gentleman on a seat near us asked if we could make a paper boat with a seat at each end and a basket in the middle for fish. Well, we were, of course, enchanted with the idea, and our new friend, after achieving the feat, gave us his card, which we at once carried to our mother. He asked if he might call where we were staying, and then presented our oldest sister with a copy of Alice in Wonderland inscribed from the author." Great story. So again, this is a great origami model to make. Now also there is origami in the Alice books, which is interesting. And if you think about it, so in Through the Looking Glass, the walrus and the carpenter are here in this image, and you see the carpenter over here wearing a hat, and that hat is made from paper, and it looks like this. Again, these are easy to make, and there's plenty of information on the web. We'll get you information on how to make these, and you can wear them. And something that's interesting about is that at first, everybody thought that these were only worn by carpenters. But then some scholars said, well, actually, no, we've looked into this. We think it's a printer's hat because it's made from a newspaper. And they used that, they wore that to protect themselves so they wouldn't get ink on their hair. But actually, some new research shows that these were actually used by all kinds of people in different jobs, laborers. So it was pretty universally popular in England at the time. But that's some nice origami that you could work with. And now Lewis Carroll loved music boxes. He had dozens of them in his home, in his house, at the university at Oxford. And he would invite his friends over, and he loved to let the children play with the music boxes. This is one that he had. It's called an orguinette, and you can turn the crank and the paper goes through and plays a tune. It's kind of like a large version of a music box. Now, Carroll, being Carroll, had to have some fun with this. So he invited Isa Bowman over one day, and he made a notation in his diary about it. He said he liked to play the orguinette backwards on purpose. And his fanciful idea was that this could cause time to run backwards. So he says in the note that he said, "Soon we found ourselves in the day before yesterday and dared not go on for fear of making Isa so young she would not be able to talk." So typical of Carroll. I'm going to end with the Mobius strip because I've got something interesting. And it was discovered by Martin Gardner. Here's a picture I took of Martin Gardner, about 12 years ago when I went out to visit him in Oklahoma. And he was 90 plus in this picture. And there you see Alice in the background over on the right in one of many book covers. Martin was still going strong when I went to spend the day with him. He was doing magic tricks for me. He was great fun to be with. And of course, he wrote the annotated Alice, which is the book that you want if you are interested in the Alice books. So let's start with the Mobius strip because Carroll talks about it in Sylvie and Bruno. Sylvie and Bruno was a book that he wrote some years after he wrote the two Alice books. And in it, 128 years ago, two of the characters talk about the Mobius strip. And the Mobius strip is like this. And in the book, he says, "You have seen the puzzle of the paper ring," Mein Herr said, addressing the Earl, "where you take a slip of paper and join its ends together, first twisting one so as to join the upper corner of one end to the lower corner of the other. I saw one made only yesterday," the Earl replied. The ring had only one surface and only one edge. It's very mysterious indeed. It's, take my scissors here. So all I did was twist the paper once and then tape it together. Now, if you try to cut down through the middle of it, I'm sure most of you have seen this. If you cut down the middle of a Mobius strip, you are in for a little bit of a surprise. I'll show you here. Because what you get is one big loop. You don't get two loops. So that's very interesting to begin with. What's even more interesting is I'm going to take, if I take one of these and I tape it together, turn this down so you can see it. So again, I'm going to make just a regular Mobius strip by twisting it once. But now I'm going to cut 1/3 of the way in instead of 2/3 of the way in, and ask you to guess for me what will happen when I do that. It takes a little while to cut all the way around, so I'll just quickly go through. And surprise, surprise, when you get halfway through, you're just continuing on. There's no change, there's no letting up. Almost done here. When you're done, you get a surprise, because you get one big loop and one small loop. So they're different ones. The most surprising of all, the one that just astonished me, was the one that Martin Gardner discovered. And to do this, there's a PDF online that you can download. We'll give you the link so that you can cut one of these out and make your own. So in this case, you have a cross-shaped piece of paper. I've already taped it together so that one part goes one way with no twist. The other half goes the other way with one twist. So you start with the one that has the 3 patterns on it. I'll turn my light down so it's a little easier to see these. There we go. So again, I'm going to cut this one into thirds. And if you've never seen this before, I wonder if you can guess what we'll end up with, because it's truly surprising. And apparently it was Martin Gardner who came up with this idea. And it's called Martin Gardner's Great Surprise. It takes a while to do this correctly, so bear with me. It's worth the wait. Almost done here. And this was the kind of thing that just lit up Martin Gardner's eyes. So it takes a while. Just talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Okay, so that's one part. We still have to do this part. There we go. Now, this is truly amazing, because hardly anyone would ever guess that what you get is a square frame that needs to be untwisted a bit. That will get it. There we go. So you end up with a square frame and one little circular piece hanging down at the bottom. So pretty amazing. Good for making your own picture frames at home. So again, this one is really fun, and we'll give you the link to that. So those are just some of Lewis Carroll's games and puzzles. There are many more, but I thought we'd end there just to give you a taste for it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care. Bye.